Oh, we're live. Hi, y'all. How are you doing? That's so funny. I was having a moment looking at the tech. I did not even realize we had gone live. I'm so looking forward to this conversation and to see y'all. I think I'm still riding high after just spent the weekend. I flew down to Tampa. I got so lucky. For those of you who don't live in the U.S., there's been all sorts of flight complications, is how we'll put it. I got so lucky with my flight in and out of New York City and flying back in. Flew down to Tampa to spend the weekend with my coach. Hosted a retreat. There's I think 23 of us there at her house. It was so lovely, and so I'm still riding high from that. But I thought I would bring some of my takeaways to you all because I had some great takeaways, and I think when you spend a weekend, I think there were 23 of us who are multi-6, seven-figure business owners having conversations. I think it's always interesting. It's helpful to hear what we were talking about. Before I dive in, quick announcement reminder, we will not have a live stream inside the Facebook group next Wednesday, November 19th, because I'm hosting a free masterclass called Social Currency. This one's brand new. I haven't taught this before. I'm really excited. I think it is. I don't necessarily need to be doing another masterclass, but I really wanted to bring this one to y'all because I just have seen how much overall this year, but recently reach is down. I think there's just a lot of stress about content working. I think there's a lot of stress about like performing for social media, the algorithm, ads costs going up, and there is an approach I have implemented I didn't really realize for pretty much the entirety of my business. I'll have been in business for 10 years in March, and it has helped me not only get fully booked with I have about 23, 24 clients, one-on-one clients in my business for the past 7 years. I make 30 to 40K plus cash months. We've made 1.8 million in this business alone, but it's the same approach that is underneath every strategy I support my clients with. So what I'm going to walk you through is not a like one size fits all strategy. It is not like a hack or a tactic. It is not how to go viral. It is not how to get more followers, how to get more views. It is an approach that is essentially what you need to make any strategy work, particularly as we're going into 2026. I really see this as, I think it's always been a thing. I think it's what makes every strategy work, but I think this is the thing we're really going to need. So it feels really important to me. So I will be teaching that next week, but you do have to sign up because I'm going to host it on Zoom so we can make this a little bit more intimate so I can answer your questions. If you show up live, I have the juiciest bonus I think I've ever given away. I would sign up just for this. I would show up just for this. I'm giving you the same collab template and the same personal outreach script that I used to make last year back in beginning of 2024 before I started changing some of my strategy. I used this and it brought in an additional $41,000, I think $150 of revenue into my business. So on top of my multi-6 figure revenue, that's what that script alone from 36 DMs. So I would join me just for that. But I think the class is going to be really great and really needed. And I don't really think I hear anybody else talking about this stuff. All right, let's dive into my takeaways. So just to set the tone, I was with my coach of, I've worked with her 7.5 years. She hosted a retreat. Just also a shout out to her. I think she's such a good example, a reminder of something I really tried to embody and think about in my business of how doing things that don't scale to scale and how we don't have to do everything just to try to like scale our business as quickly as possible and take the biggest money grab. She hosted this. It wasn't for free. We paid a $150 deposit. I obviously had to buy a plane ticket and a hotel. Like I definitely spent a pretty penny on go there, but she didn't charge us additional on top of our one-on-one coaching. I obviously invest a lot in that, but for the weekend, and gosh, we could have a whole live stream just on that and that concept alone. I think sometimes we're so quick as business owners just to look at how can I make a quick dollar today instead of, especially when we have high touch, high level offers like a one-on-one offer or a mastermind or group, looking at really how can we make things more inclusive and really treat our people well and look at the longevity of the relationship and like what we're pouring into people and how we can create a win-win situation. Anyway, so that, I don't know if that's a takeaway, but maybe it is. I think there's a big business lesson in that alone. But one of the things we did, so most of us have worked with her for a really long time. I think majority of us are multi-6, seven-figure business owners. Maybe there's a couple of outliers there, but if we work with her for a long time, most of our business are working. We didn't necessarily need to have like a bunch of lectures and talks or like a bunch of new ideas to implement. So what she had us do instead is break out into breakout groups to basically like mini mastermind on certain topics, which I found personally really valuable. I really found the connection valuable and just being around other business owners valuable, but I found that much more valuable than having a bunch of lectures. And then we also had a speaker, Shannon Watts, and I will share a takeaway that I had from her. I think she's incredible, and definitely was really inspiring to listen to. So I'm pulling a couple of my takeaways from those conversations. So these are sort of like what jumped out to me, not necessarily people's answers, but just some of the things I was really noticing, that I found important, and just some of the things I am and am not implementing. Let me see. So I just made a list for myself. Not so much notes, but just a list. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to share was one of my takeaways is sort of the secret behind every single woman in the room and their results. And the biggest reminder for me that came up around what creates success, that I really want to make sure I'm staying focused on myself, and then I'm making sure I'm supporting clients around. And then this is really the biggest probably thing I'm implementing in my business. So this is going to sound overly simple, so don't hop off because I've got a lot of great nuggets here, but I think this is one we cannot hear enough. When we were wrapping up the weekend, one of the women asked me, she's like, so what are you going to, like, what was your biggest takeaway? What are you going to take away from this? And I paused and I was like, my biggest takeaway, like the thing I'm going to implement is nothing. And I'm going to explain what I mean by this. What I noticed more than anything, and what was one of the most valuable things to me, is just seeing literally there is no secret to business, and every single woman has a different business model, is doing something different, is implementing something different, but there is no secret. Like, what works for them is because they have picked something that is in alignment to them. They've picked a strategy that works for them, and they're all fucking working it, and they're staying in their lane, and they're not looking for a secret, and they're not looking outside themselves, and they're not getting wrapped up in shiny object syndrome. And I found that just to be so validating and so normalizing as someone who has really decided to stay true, obviously, to a one-on-one business model. But it really just landed for me. There was one of the women there, for example, is killing it with Instagram, but she's also was very honest that not only does she pour a lot of time into studying Instagram and to working her posts, she spends an hour alone a day just in the DMs responding to comments, because like to DM comments, and then she cuts it off because she has too many, which sounds like a good problem to have, but that can take up a lot of time. But then there was someone else who is really not into organic and has spent all of their time investing in learning ads, optimizing ads, getting their ads really good, spending money on that. And it'd be so easy to be like, Instagram is the secret, being in the DMs is the secret, ads are the secret, I should do that. And the reality is neither one of those is the secret. The secret is both of them found what works for them, for their strengths, and both of them have just really doubled down, and they're pouring their time, their energy, their effort, their money into those things, and that's why it's working so well for them. And I think it's so easy, particularly when we're in the online space and we're getting lots of information, or when we go to an event like this, to see all of these different things, be like, that's the thing I need to implement. That's the secret. That's the secret. And I think what is so helpful instead is to see, what I really saw is there's literally no secret. There was nothing anyone shared, and not in a bad way, but there was nothing anyone shared. I was like, oh, I haven't heard of that, or I'm not coaching a client around that, or I don't have a client doing that, or I don't know about that. The secret is how they all thought about their business, showed up for their business, showed up for that strategy, really committed to it. Like, the secret is not that it's like hard work grinded out, but the secret is they're all just all working their secret, and their strategy, and there really isn't a secret. And so I don't know, that might be the thing where you jump off, because that just feels like so, I don't know, I think sometimes we wish there was a secret. And like, Kim, tell me the one thing to do. But that is like the one thing I would say to do, is to find what is the strategy that is aligned to your strengths that you can show up for. And really, how can you go all in on it? And when you've gone all in on it, how can you not get complacent and know that things continue to change in our industry and to continue to double down? Like, that's really just what I saw. And so with that, like, the thing I'm implementing is I'm really walking away not implementing anything new, but not in a way of like, I didn't get anything valuable. I have lots of insights I'm going to share with you, but really in this way of, I think the most valuable takeaway I got is what I'm doing is working. I'm not missing anything. I love my business. I love my strategy. Like, things are working really well. And the best thing I can do is stay in my lane and double down on that, as opposed to like jumping like into doing something new. So I hope that makes sense for y'all. Let's see. Okay. The, next one is, okay, so the next takeaway for you is the surprising, we had a prompt just around AI and sort of how we're using AI to create more human connection. So I don't know if this one will be surprising to y'all, but I really liked this conversation. It just in terms of like the surprising ways we are using AI to create more human connection. And I won't like try to tease this out. Basically, the answer to that is all of us in different ways. We're saying we're not using it to be human. And that sounds so funny, but I think it was actually very validating for all of us in different ways to say, oh my gosh, it is so wild how much we can spot AI written content, landing pages, things from a mile away, and how many of us are having to coach clients and saying like, hey, you've got to like go back to the drawing board, and how many of us are seeing people's critical thinking skills, creativity, their voice getting lost to AI, how much we're seeing the ability to, I don't know, sit in the discomfort of having to think for a moment, go out the window, because that is uncomfortable. And we're just seeing clients and people outsource that to AI, and how we're just seeing such a detrimental impact in terms of the quality of content, the quality of engagement, the quality of results in business. I think I've probably said this to multiple clients of mine where I'm like, it's not that this is bad. AI doesn't create. Look, AI is valuable. I'll share some of the ways we are using AI. And look, this might change. AI is, we're in the infancy of it. It's not going anywhere unless it just totally destroys our environment and we have no water. That's a different conversation, but it's not going anywhere. I think it's really important for us to be on top of technology and to understand how this is being used in business. And I think there are really smart strategic ways. When someone was talking about how they were using it, actually my coach is like using it more to create, like with Zaps, to create automations to streamline certain tasks in business. I think there's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of like formulaic things, problem solving with like, I had an issue with ads that I couldn't figure out, and I put in some information. Like, I think it's very helpful for that. And even there, you have to be so mindful because it will give you a lot of misinformation and you have to check it all the time. But when it comes to critical thinking, when it comes to writing content, when it comes to writing an email, when it comes to creating a landing page, when it comes to coming up with your thought leadership, all of us were saying in different ways, look, we've all tried it, we've all tested it, everybody's using it. We were all saying either it just makes things harder and worse, or it's making things take twice as long, or it will edit something for us, but it's almost overly polished, and then it takes more time for us to go back and bring in our voice, or it just sounds really bad. And especially when we're using it to generate ideas, we're just seeing it's just not good. And what I will say is, and this is, I mean, look, I have no judgment. I know a lot of people want to use AI because it saves them time. What I would just offer, what we were all just saying, like, this is a room of many people who have also many clients using this. So this isn't just it was just very validating to hear this. I think there is a way in which you can use AI to improve the quality of your content if you're using it for editing or to brainstorm and to go back and forth. I have not seen how that is time saving for anyone. If you're using it in a way that is actually creating something valuable, I think it probably takes 3 times as long. I know sometimes I will run things for edits through AI, and it honestly takes me 4 times as long than if I were to do it myself. Part of the reason is I have to do so much work to undo what I think it messes up and where it loses my voice, but there is just a lot of back and forth there. But the other big thing here, and I think this is just really important to name, again, you do you, but I will just say again, this is from a room of multi-6 and 7-figure business owners who are not struggling in business this year when so many people are talking about that, and who are supporting, collectively, I'm sure it's thousands of clients. So we are just seeing this. I don't think I heard a single person in that room say, oh my gosh, I just love the content. I love AI content. Every single person said I can just spot it from a mile away, and all it makes me think is I don't want to listen to this person. I don't want to tune into this person. It's not that it's bad. It just, like, why wouldn't I go to AI and ask that question myself? And I really do think one of the things I was reflecting, and this is my personal prediction, so one of the things I added to the conversation, I really think we are seeing such a decline in critical thinking skills. I think we forget that critical thinking, gosh, this is gonna be the live stream where you're like, Kim, none of this stuff is stuff we want to hear, but this is just the truth of it. I think critical thinking is such a muscle. It is a skill set, right? We have to learn how to think. I remember when I think it was in middle school, we learned about metacogitating, thinking about thinking, and like critical thinking skills. That is a skill set. it is a really important muscle as CEOs, as business owners, as entrepreneurs. One of the things we have, besides our ability to connect as humans, is our critical thinking skills. I mean, that is so much, especially for us as coaches, therapists, any kind of service provider, right? OBM, lawyer, like that is one of the things we bring to the table. That is one of the things people hire us for. Yes, it's the human connection, but it is also our ability to have those critical thinking skills, to be able to see things from different lenses, to have discernment, right? These are all things that are quite important. And what I am seeing happen kind of at an alarming rate through clients and peers who are overly leaning onto AI is such a decline of those skills and such a decline in self-trust where that is all being outsourced. There's a funny like skit on Instagram going around, and it's someone basically like it's two people talking, but all through AI, and it's like someone says something and they type it in, they wait for the response to go back, and it's funny because it's starting to become true. So this isn't like don't use AI. And my takeaway was if you're looking for how can you bring more human touch into your business, if you're looking at how can I leverage AI to be more human, if you're looking at how can I differentiate in an AI driven world, if you're looking at how can I connect more with people, build a personal brand, if I know relationships are the thing, how can I do more of that? I would say the number one takeaway there was use less of AI to create the human touch. Use less of AI to do your messaging for you. Use less of AI to write your content for you. Use less of AI to do your thought leadership for you. Like the less you use that, the more human you're going to bring, the more you're going to be working that critical thinking muscle. Is that harder? Is that maybe more uncomfortable? I don't know, probably. You know, like I think that's why we lean on these things. Like I think there's just a truth to that. Will that change in the future? I don't know, maybe. Are there lots of people with fancy prompts and things that you can work around and stuff that can be pretty good and passable? Absolutely. And I think what we will see, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think what we will see as time goes on is the utilization of AI will be really great for certain things where it can save us time, where it can do things where we don't need that human touch and element. But I think we're also going to start to see a really huge divide in our space between people who have critical thinking skills and don't. I think we are going to hire people for critical thinking skills and discernment, and that is a muscle that will atrophy. I think we're also just going to see more and more the difference in how content lands, depending on who writes it. Anyway, that's my, who knows what people say. Nikki says, so glad I was able to catch this one. Oh, so happy to have you here. Let me know if you have thoughts on this. Chime in. Let me know if you have questions. But again, it's not like people aren't using it. I think a lot of people are using it in really innovative ways. It just wasn't for their thought leadership or content. So I'm not saying, like, I don't know, if you listen to Gary Vee, who's very good at predicting trends, he's like, get on the AI train. It is not going anywhere. And I'm pretty sure Gary Vee is the first one to say he still writes all of his content. He is on the trends. He is, this is not for the mastermind, but Gary Vee, if you don't, Gary Vaynerchuk, like he predicted TikTok was going to be big beforehand. He predicted AI, online marketing and blew up his father's wine company that way. He's very great at seeing what kind of like where the future of marketing and business is. He will tell you first, like, get on AI, like don't get left behind. And he will also tell you he still writes all of his content. He doesn't hire a writer for that. He literally owns an advertising agency full of copywriters and creatives, and he still writes his own content and copy. There's a reason for that. Okay, I will not overly preach on that one. Let me just see. Okay, next one here is the comment. Okay, this one, I think we all intuitively know this one, and this was not a conversation we had. This was just something I really noticed from observing so many people who had scaled and who had like big breakthroughs, or who were like, this was the year my business really popped, or I made this one shift and like business got so much easier. Like I had always been successful, but it just felt like so much hard work, and then like everything got easy and like my business blew up. Just noticing those different conversations with women, this was the common thread behind all of those, and just kind of like where those pop moments came from, like what was creating sustainability. And this is going to sound cheesy, and I think you intuitively know this, but I think we underestimate and can get so wrapped up in everything but this in business. And I think this is so the kernel of, like what really creates sustainability, long-term success, but also more money in your business. And that is alignment and picking what you like to do. It sounds so fucking simple. And I think simple does not always mean easy, but alignment in terms of you are doing what is in alignment to your strengths, to your zone of genius, to the way you want to work, and then picking the thing you want to do in terms of the offer you have, the business model, the work you do. I cannot tell you what a difference this makes. So I'll use myself as an example, but for one of I want to be really mindful. I don't like make it clear who I'm talking about because I'm sure some people want their confidentiality around that. But one of the women I was speaking to had a successful business, and she's kind of completely changed the niche she has, the offer she has, the type of work she does, the audience she serves, and how she serves them, because she was getting really burnt out. I think this is vague enough. She was getting pretty burnt out, I think, with one-on-one, and she completely changed things. And she's like, it's wild. She's like, it was like the second I leaned into something that felt good, that felt easy, that like I'm naturally good at, that like didn't like stress me out, burn me out, that didn't feel super heavy. It's like, she's like, I barely even talked about it, and my business kind of just blew up from that. I'm not saying like you don't have to do anything. She obviously markets. She obviously has built an infrastructure for that. But I do think that's just such an interesting thing to see. And I could see it across so many people. I think about that in my own business. I think one of the reasons look, I obviously work in my business. There are things that can be challenging in my business, but I think I have one of the easy is such a crappy word to use. Easeful, simple. I think I'm one of the happiest business owners. Maybe that's like a good way to say. And I think I have like one of the most simple business models, and my business has been thriving for over 7 years, and it is relatively easeful. But I think one of the reasons for that isn't because I have some secret or I'm doing some crazy strategy no one knows about, or because one-on-one is the right thing to do. The example I just shared was someone who's like, that was not the thing for me. It's because I've tried all the other business models and other things, and I know how to sell courses. I sold them. I know how to sell group programs. I sold them and deliver them. I know how to sell masterminds and deliver them. I've done that. Those just weren't the thing that lit me up the most, and that wasn't what I was most in alignment with. One-on-one was, and so when I picked that, I went all in on that. Like everything just got so much easier. There were just so many examples of that. So I won't overly talk on that because I feel like I talk about that one a lot. It wasn't necessarily a brand new takeaway for me, but it was just really interesting to notice the evidence of that. Like, oh, it's not just me and my clients. Like this is just a theme all around. And I could just, I mean, I think my coach is a good example of that. I could just see that with every single person. And I could also see the people who are like in a place of like what they, like the season they were at is like they were struggling with, do I let this part of my business go? Because I really wanted to lean into this other thing. And it was still a piece of like, because this doesn't feel like I did this because I felt like I was supposed to, because the industry told me to, because I kind of got locked into it, because it started making me money, but it now feels heavy. It feels crunchy. And sort of like the reflections from people of like, oh, well, anytime we're chasing money for the sake of making money because we think we're supposed to, because the industry tells us to, like you can make that work, especially if you're smart, high achieving, like showing up for things. But generally there is always a cap on how far we can take that or scale that, because, and generally that's really unsustainable, because there is a point where it just no longer becomes joyful to show up for, and every business will have challenges. So as soon as there's a challenge, that is no longer worth showing up for when you don't even really like what's on the other side. And so how even the reflections to people were how beneficial it would be if they leaned into that thing that had more that was more alignment for them. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like there's one other thought that comes up for me there around that. I feel like that is one of those things, alignment. I almost hate sometimes the coaching words, not because I hate them, but I think they get like abused and misused. I think it can sound so fluffy where it's like, just pick what you like, just pick what's in alignment. I think it's fluffy because sometimes we use these words we misuse them, right? And so we say that, but we say that to mean avoid the challenging things in business, avoid the discomfort. We don't take alignment to mean alignment. We take it to mean just do things that don't feel hard, just do things that don't feel uncomfortable. If something feels crunchy, if it feels hard, if you're in a growth phase, if you have to have an uncomfortable conversation, if you have to go through a challenge, that means you're not in alignment and you shouldn't do it. That's not what this is at all. I think every single woman there was so willing to lean into the discomfort, the challenge, like sometimes to a detrimental like sometimes too much so, but that's not what I mean by alignment. Alignment is really like what I'm talking about here more is like what's the work you would do for free, like what's the thing you would do for free, like secretly. I always say like I would secretly do one-on-one for free even if someone didn't pay me, but of course I like money too. What's the way that like that is really aligned to your strength, that you feel best showing up, that really aligns to the way you most want to work, not the thing that like doesn't ever have any growth opportunities. Like that's just not a thing in business. That feels important to context. Okay, well, here's the next one. Okay, this one was a fun one. So the next takeaway for me were two seemingly different leadership lessons that came from undoing the same conditioning, and why this matters if you want a big business and income without burning out. Um, okay, so where do I start with this? I'll actually give the first example was, again, not necessarily so much in a breakout room, but just from observing. I think I'm an observer. I think it's part of being a coach. And I'm someone who's like always wanted to study success. So one of the things, and someone I was with noted, like reflected this as well, and it just like really stood out to me. And I think I can say this without, I don't think Lacey is psyched as my coach. I don't think she would mind. But one of the things I really witnessed and noticed in her, I think she has great leadership skills, and I think she's really done a great job with team. And a lot of what I've learned from, I've had a team now for 7-8 years, and I think a great team that's been with me for a long time, and that's what I support clients with quite a bit. And I'm always just like fascinated by like, you know, those dynamics, and just how do we show up to lead in a way that is really effective, and just like where do our patterns show up as humans, male and female, like where do our patterns show up that kind of hinder that? Because a lot of times what I see through my clients, what I see through myself is we can sort of lead up to the level of our own personal growth, but we usually have stuff to unpack, patterns that will show up, family dynamics, right? People pleasing, good girl conditioning, different things that will show up in our leadership as well as with our clients. And to the degree that we can unpack, rewire those, like is to the degree we can lead and scale our businesses. And so something I noticed happened, there was, Lacey shared this, so I can share this. There was like a thing with the food that didn't show up, whatever the thing was. Lacey had her CEO, no, what did she call her? Probian? She had a right hand there. And it was a very simple thing, but her name's Taylor. She just said to Taylor, how do you want to handle this? Something like that. And I thought that was such a really great learning moment, and such a great moment to witness, because I think so many of us, when we're in leadership, get into good girl conditioning, or into overfunctioning, or into proving that we know the things, or into being control freaks. And it is so easy and reactive for a lot of us when there is basically the food didn't show up on time, when something is happening, launch emails didn't go out right, there's a problem in the business, we need to send something off to a client, food doesn't show up on time, to instead of delegate to our teams and to give them a chance to step into their role and to show up to do their role to support us, to instead take on more responsibility and ownership that is ours. I think I see this a lot. I coach clients a lot around their dynamics with their clients. I see this a lot, in client coach, client therapist relationships as well. And what I think was really helpful to see there modeled was, it would have been so easy for Lacey, for example, to be like, okay, here's a plan, or here's what I want you to do, or like, here's how I think this should happen, to really take control of that, as opposed to she literally delegated that over to and empowered her support to come up with a solution to solve that. So that was something she didn't have to deal with and have to worry about. And I think there's a lot we could unpack there just from a leadership lens, but I thought that was just a really great thing to witness. And it was just a great takeaway for me. And what I really saw there is, gosh, that is such a great example of deconditioning, good girl conditioning, deconditioning overfunctioning, deconditioning people pleasing, deconditioning of I think I said overfunctioning already, but even like needing to be in control. And so that was one really great leadership example there and lesson. Let me know if you have any questions around that. One of the ones I shared in our breakout group that I think landed with a lot of people, and I probably share this to some degree, but someone in the group was like, you need to talk with your people about this more. And so maybe I'll do some more live streams. They're like, you should also break down the numbers on this more. But many of you know, I'm the breadwinner in our family. An air quotes retired my husband a couple of years ago here in New York City. And this is going to go to leadership. One of the things I was sharing, one of the most almost like confronting things that came up for me when that happened, is how much work I had to do around asking for support and allowing someone to support me and to receive that. My husband takes care of everything for for us at home now, and he's very well, like, I have a unicorn of a husband, but I had so much resistance around that, and I had so much, and like we could unpack this just in terms of trauma and everything, but just in terms of like over functioning, controlling, like um, being so quick to be like, I don't need that, like wanting to almost like minimize my needs, not asking for what I wanted or needed. So much around also like when he would do something like feeling guilty or feeling like I should be doing that, or not even micromanaging, just I think feeling a lot of guilt. And I've had to do a lot of I've done a lot of work around this between therapy, coaching, but also as a couple. But one of the things my husband has, and we've talked about, that was really helpful for me is how good it makes him feel when he's able to do those things, how in his masculine it makes him feel, how good it makes him feel when I actually ask for what I want, when I'm clear around it, when I don't have a lot of guilt around it. And that has been such a, I guess, healing, but also growth opportunity for me as a leader. And I've really seen that translate into how I show up with team, particularly in like asking for what I want, delegating, right? Like not feeling guilty around that. I think it's been easier with team, but like this really helped me to step up as a CEO and like in my leadership with my team. And I think it's similar, kind of like just in terms of like what the takeaway here was. What I really see there is such a deconditioning of good girl conditioning, right? I mean, I think there's some trauma stuff in there as well, but there's such a high performer, good. We talked about this one of the other live streams, like the intersection of good girl conditioning and being a high achiever, I think really brings some very unique patterns that have both a, like, look, we get a lot of shit done. There's a lot of things that can do for us, but a lot of ways that really hold us back and can be detrimental. And in receiving, asking for what we want, receiving support, not over functioning, not taking on more, like not just like pay. I used to pay people on my team and basically do half the work for them, or think like, how can I make this easy for them, or like how can I like minimize all of the lift for them, instead of really the other way. Like it really should be the other way around. Anyway, and then feel guilt around that if I just asked for what I needed, or if someone had to like do some work for me, even though I was paying them. So all of that I think comes back to kind of that deconditioning and kind of that same example I was seeing through Lacey. So I think that was a great one there. I had one other one on the leadership piece. Oh, I almost wasn't going to share this because I'm always mindful. This was one I shared as well with the group. I'm just always mindful of, again, just confidentiality, but I think this is vague enough. One of the things I shared, and this kind of goes into the similar, like, deconditioning, good girl conditioning, if that's a term, and like just noticing so many of the patterns. I think a lot of us high achieving women, business owners, I think men as well, but particularly women have when we have that intersection. One of the things I really learned, and I think this one resonated a lot when I shared this with the group, is being quicker to spot when, kind of goes back to the alignment as well, when someone is not a fit on my team and letting them go sooner, and being willing to have those hard conversations and to not feel guilty around them, and to not keep a team member to be nice for months and months and months and months, or just like constantly see like, how can I make this better? Like, what's wrong with me? Or how can I fix this? Of course, we have responsibilities as business owners. I want to be very mindful in this conversation. Just like we have responsibilities in our client relationships. And a lot of us who come into that like intersection of the good girl conditioning, high achieving, a lot of us can be very over functioning and can overly take on responsibility and can overly try to fix, to smooth over, and can overly tolerate. And I know for me, I have a pattern of almost having too much tolerance for things that don't serve me. And so that has been one of my biggest lessons in business, and particularly this year, my growth edges. We brought someone on who's wonderful to my team at the beginning of the year, but wasn't the right fit. And in the past, I've had that happen, and I have let it drag out for months and months and months and months, and spent an absorbent amount of money basically cleaning up mistakes. And like, I really take ownership for that. Like, that's really on me. And I really did that differently this year, and was like just really quick to catch that and to make the shift on my team. And it's been one of the best things that's happened for our team, quite honestly. I think my team's in one of the best places. I've always had a great team, but just like, it's in a really great place. But I think that was one of the reasons for it. But I think that could not have happened if I hadn't done that work around kind of unhooking from some of those patterns. And that's why I say I think these things are so nuanced, right? It's really easy to hear these things, but I think this is why coaching is so valuable. If we don't see the patterns underneath what drives some of these behaviors, it's really easy for us to stay stuck in business and to really hit limits and to like not understand why we're spending so much on team and why our profit margin is low, and to think, oh gosh, if I could just be more efficient, then I would, have more profitability. When sometimes it's like, actually, if we could unhook from some of these patterns, then we can get the right team members on board, and we can have the hard conversations, then we can delegate in a way that actually takes some of this off of our plate. Then we can actually receive that support. Then we actually are more efficient because we're not doubling down on all the work, and we do have more profitability, or we do have more capacity to scale. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one. Let me know if you have questions around that, though. But that one feels actually, I would say this is, if it's just helpful to hear, this is a conversation and support aim, especially as my clients are scaling. We are having so much around team and around clients and just around scalability. Again, I think so often we think scaling is simply, how do I just throw more money at ads? How do I just bring in more leads? And part of it really, yes, I talk about capacity a lot. Like, yes, you have to have capacity, both physical capacity, mental capacity, energetic capacity. That is absolutely true. But I think we forget all of the ways we bleed capacity without even realizing it, by overfunctioning, by taking on and doing the work for our team, by staying in situations with team members who aren't actually supporting us, by not asking for what we need, by not delegating in an effective way, by not allowing ourselves to receive support, by spending all day feeling guilty for the support we're receiving, right? All of these things are capacity leaks, and it's so easy to spend all of this time looking for other things to fix in our business and not to realize this is actually the thing. Okay, let's see. I think I have two more things here. Okay, I don't see questions, but if you have one, please feel free to pop it up. Okay, so the next thing I said I was going to share is the money lesson that stuck with me, the one I share that stuck with others, and the wealth building approach I'm doubling down on. So the money lesson that stuck with me that I hope this will land for y'all. I thought it was just such a good reminder. I would say that I was doing this, but it was one of those things I'm like, oh, I really needed to hear that. And I think that's what can be so valuable about having these conversations. And I think that's also sometimes what's so valuable with coaching. I think about this all the time when I'm talking to my coach and we're having sessions, or when I'm coaching clients. There are so many times I talk about things where I'm like, I already know this. I've said this like 500 times, but I need to hear it in a new way, or I need to like I really need to hear it in this moment, or like this is something like I need to have reflected to me. Anyway, the money lesson that really stuck with me, one of the women shared that she had a 7-figure business, but it was all built through really striving, chasing, like always needing to make more, kind of like really scaling for the sake of scaling kind of mentality. And she has just done a lot of work to dismantle what's underneath that. And this year was the first year she really instead went after like, what's her enough number? And I don't know if she exactly framed it that way, but that's the way I heard it. And I would tell you that that's how I've always thought about my business. Like, I'm definitely clear on like, what's our enough number. I definitely don't think I'd have an all one-on-one business model with revenue share if I was just scaling for the sake of scaling. So I definitely don't think I fall into that trap at all. But what really landed for me there is she was just so embodied in that number truly being enough and not needing more. And of course, like when you're in that place, it's easy to make more. And it was just a really, I think what really stood out to me is how sincerely content, happy, abundant she seemed, and how the way she was reflecting this is when she was literally making more money. I think she felt like she had less and she wasn't feeling that way. And she's still making a lot of money, so like relative here. But it was just a really good reminder for me, because I do think, and the reason I needed this reminder is I do think it is, especially if I have some bigger like money goals and some things I want to do, I think it is easy to really have an enough number and to really feel like, yeah, I'm not like scaling just for the sake of scaling. I'm not chasing more money, but to not notice how we get really used to our enough number. It becomes the new normal, and how easy it is to start thinking, well, now I need more, now I need more, now I need more. And I'm really mindful, I'm like having a hard time articulating this exactly, in that it doesn't mean she or I are not available for more. It does not mean that I don't want more. It does not mean that I don't want to receive more, but I think it's almost easier to make and receive more and to hold it and to keep it and to have it and to not push it away and to sustain it when it is coming from this place of I already have enough. I don't like this would just be icing on the best, yummiest cake ever versus if I don't have this, like there's a problem, like I'm not good enough, I'm not safe. One of the things we spoke about, and this will probably resonate with a lot of you, is how much money can get tied into safety if we're not careful. I know for me that has always been like the edge I've worked around with money is like it's almost like there's no amount of money that can make me feel safe, and I've done a lot of work around that. So this was just, I think it was almost more from that lens that really just was helpful for me to hear, and just that kind of like, yeah, what is my, like maybe that's a better way to say, like what is my safety enough number, and then of course like I'm available to make more. But it really changes your orientation in business and how you're showing up. And I think, ironically, it makes it easier to create more money. But I think because I've had some new money goals, it started from a place of like, I already have a safety enough number. And I was noticing just a little bit of pressure creeping in around those goals. And this just really helped like reset and reground me back into that. So if that's helpful for you, I think just understanding like what is your safety enough number? That can still be like an abundant number, but really chasing that and making that as your goal, I think is yeah, just one of the most grounded, sustainable things you can do for your business. And I think it actually helps you to make more than that. Okay, so the money, the money thing that I shared with others, that you know how sometimes you share things and you don't realize, like I think some of these things are so not like basic, but I have just always been good with money. I love money. I love making money. I love playing with my money. I love leveraging my money and investing my money. Outside of the safety thing, I'm generally pretty neutral about money. I love supporting clients with it. So because of that, it's just, I mean, I started investing when I was like 20, 21. I was saving my money when I was like 6. Like these are just things that have just like always been so ingrained in me. So it was actually a very helpful reflection to be in these groups as well with other successful women to share certain things, like, you know, some of the things I shared around leadership, to have people be like, oh, I needed to hear that, or like I hadn't thought about it, or like I don't know, like that's something that like isn't the way I think about it, because I think all of us can be so close to what we do that we just take for granted that's how everybody thinks about things. Anyway, so one of the things I shared with everyone, and let me know if this is something that's interesting to you, if you want me to do more conversations on this, because I was talking about how I think about money, and one of them was actually like, you should talk about this more. You should talk about how you and your husband, since you're the breadwinner, how you guys split up money and do for things. But I have just always been really clear on, yes, what the enough number is, but just knowing my numbers and really what the numbers I need really practically. And so if this is helpful, like I'm really clear on what my retirement number goal is. And I really think of my retirement number goal through the lens of, what do I want to be able to pay myself yearly after taxes to have a very comfortable lifestyle, which means I've also really understand what is my lifestyle, like my comfortable lifestyle number. Not that I can't make more, but like I'm very clear, I guess that would be my enough number, on what I want to and need to pay myself every year after taxes. So those are just two numbers I really know, which means then I also really understand what is my saving number, what is my investment number so that I can reach that retirement goal, what is the revenue number I need to make every month or every quarter, right, to reach that top line revenue number, to like reach all of those goals. And then I always like, that really helps me to understand what, like, money loves a purpose, right? What money I need to bring in and what it's all being allocated for. But the other reason, let me know if it makes sense. This probably could be a whole live stream. The other reason I really value those numbers, and one of the things I was sharing, is I think, especially if you're someone who's a little bit more like me, where money can be a thing where it's almost like, if it is our safety, we can almost overly invest or overly save. And one of the things I've really learned this year in particular is, or leaned into more, is how important it is also to circulate money and to spend money. So I like to have like an overflow bucket, like a spending number. And so when I know all these different numbers, and particularly when I know what that retirement number goal is and what I need to invest to like reliably be able to get to that, it really helps me to also then be able to spend and enjoy my money and to not overly save and invest. When I don't know all of these numbers, it's almost like no amount of money will ever be enough, right? It's really hard for me to get to that enough number we were talking about, because it feels like It doesn't matter how much I make. I'm just like, no amount can make me safe. When I map out all of these numbers and I can see, oh, when I have X amount in retirement, I will just reliably for the rest of my life be able to pay myself X amount in salary. And that I know is more than enough to cover not just basic needs, but like a really lovely lifestyle, the lifestyle that I want. And I know if I invest X amount every month until X year with a certain percentage rate, like I will reliably hit that number. It also means I don't need to invest more than that. I don't need to save more than that, right? If I know my savings number goal, like if I know all of these numbers, right? If I know my enough number for what I need to pay myself each month to have all of that abundance to be able to do these different things, it really makes it easy. Otherwise, past Kim, when she was 21, like I just swirled all of my money away and I didn't enjoy any of it. And I really think that's how we get into unhealthy situations with money. And I actually think that will limit our capacity to scale because we stop it just starts feeling like pressure. It starts feeling unsafe. There's a lot of weird charge. We start making really weird decisions. We also don't enjoy the fruits of our labor. So knowing all of those numbers, but also knowing all of those numbers so that, yes, you're saving, investing, making, right, bringing enough in, but also so that you're not overly saving and investing. Because the truth is, after a certain amount, I know for retirement, after I pay myself a certain amount, yeah, sure, like it's nice to have more money. I'm not mad if more comes in, but like, if that's just like way more than I'm ever going to need or spend, like it doesn't really serve me. I can't take it with me when I go. Yes, it'll be nice for my stepson to have when I go, but like it's already going to be more than enough. Do you know what I mean? Like there is actually a benefit to spending and enjoying some of it now. So that was the one that I shared that seemed to really land with people. And then my husband and I have regular money dates to talk about these and to see if we're on track. So that way we can also just make smart financial decisions with our money, right? I know these numbers, but then I can also really see it's like data in my business. It's no different than me taking a look at the metrics on social media or my email list or our ads or like what's going on with my pipeline. The more, or my roster, right? The more I know the metrics that like drive certain results or what we need to create certain results, the easier it is to also make smart decisions. So we used to do this once a week, but we honestly don't. We like switched it to a month. We have this one once a month. We have money meeting, but we also look literally at all of the numbers. So we can also make smart decisions, like sometimes, to reallocate things, or do we need to up something or lower something? Okay. I don't want to go too far into that because otherwise I'll turn that into like a whole side tangent conversation. But if you have a question around that, or if you want me to do a deeper dive live stream, let me know. I will share my last takeaway though for you. I mean, I had so many takeaways, but I was trying to find the high level ones that I thought would speak most everybody. So the last takeaway is when Shannon Watts spoke. So Shannon Watts created the biggest grassroots movement, I think, in the U.S. Around gun form policy, and she's also written the book Fired Up, which is more about like finding your passion and purpose. I have the book on my bedside table that I will be reading. She's incredibly well spoken. She was incredibly inspiring. One of the things, I'll share a takeaway from what she shared, but just in terms of observing her, I thought something that was really interesting is, well, a couple of things. She shared that she was like an introvert, had ADHD, and she wasn't a great speaker. And someone asked her how she became a great speaker, and she's like, literally by doing it a whole lot, because she cared about this work so much. She was incredibly well spoken and articulate, and I thought it was just such a good reminder of if there's something we want badly enough, and if like the juice is worth the squeeze, we will show up for the uncomfortable thing. But we can't outsource our push-ups, right? Like she has become a great speaker and does this even though she's not super comfortable, because what's on the other side of the discomfort is worth it for her, and she has just shown up and put enough reps to get good at it and to know that she can handle that discomfort. She didn't necessarily say it that way, but that's just something I observed. But one of the things I also noticed is she was such a great model to me of someone really modeling boundaries as an introverted person while still giving so much. And what I mean by that is she spoke, and she definitely shared like very openly. She gave us so much, and when she was done with the talk, she was done with the talk, and then she signed books, and I like said something to her and like thanked her around something, and she did such a really interesting and great job of just essentially kindly shutting down what I think I was probably opening up, like being like overly flowing and gushing and like almost wanting to ask her a question. But she had a bunch of us and she was on a timeline, and I think she is an introvert, and she was like, this is what I'm going to give, and I'm not going to give more. And she just had this really interesting, kind way of basically shutting me down. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean this in a, like, I was taking notes of, just thanking me, and then essentially she said, and what's your name for the book, right? She just didn't engage in the conversation. She thanked me and then went into signing the book. And I reflect that here because this goes back to that good girl conditioning conversation I brought up earlier, and with the leadership, and with, I think, where so many of us don't realize we are leaking energy and don't understand where our time is going and where our energy is going and why things feel so draining. I thought that was just such a great example of, you can show up and give so much value and be likable and be kind and be connecting and build relationships and be empathetic and do all of the things, and you can do so in a way which is like, and this is what I have to give, this is my boundary, and I don't, like, next, moving on. And you can, I think if you were stuck in people pleasing, good girl, it would just be so, an event like that would be so draining because you would need to go deep with every single person. I don't know, that might also just be my nature. But I think somebody else would handle that so well. And I was thinking about the work she has done in terms of, like, you know, having to face off with, like, people in government around gun reform. Like, that is not, I mean, she was sharing some stories, which I won't get into here, just in terms of, like, even just the threats and stuff she was getting. You can't do that if you're just so wrapped around, like, how can I just be the nicest person and people pleasing and, like, over functioning and without any boundaries. And you can't build a movement and a big brand and, like, mobilize something that is, like, the biggest grassroots movement with all these people behind you if you're also just like, that means I'm just not going to talk to anybody ever, or I'm going to hole up, or I'm just never going to public speak, or I'm just never going to engage with people, right? And I think we have such a tendency in business to pendulum swing and to say, well, the only way to do this is I have to be, like, narrowly focused, and, like, it just feels too heavy and hard to talk to people. That takes up too much time. Like, I think you get what I'm saying. Like, I think we just have such a tendency to pendulum swing instead of seeing, like, there's such a way to have both. It just requires us to decondition some of those patterns that make us either want to overfunction or completely avoid and hide. And then looking at how do we have healthy boundaries and seeing what a boundary is what she modeled there. What a boundary is not, and I think this is where we get trapped, is we tend to think a boundary is, kind of going back to the alignment conversation, we tend to think it just means anything that feels uncomfortable or I don't like, I don't do, right? Just like alignment does not mean just because this is hard or uncomfortable, it's out of alignment. Same with a boundary, right? That's not what a boundary is. That's not what alignment is. A boundary is, I am going to put a boundary around this container, right, this time. It's what she modeled when I was getting my book signed, but she was still showing up to do the thing, right? I think it'd be so easy, and what I see in our space so much is like, no, I have a boundary, I just don't do book signings. I have a boundary, I just don't talk to people. I have a boundary, I just don't get in the DMs. I have a boundary, I just don't speak. When it's not really a boundary, it's just, this feels uncomfortable, this feels hard. It's actually, I don't know how to have a boundary because I don't know how not to overfunction or how not to overdeliver or how to hold a boundary. So I pretend this is a boundary by just avoiding, by not showing up, or by doing it and then overgiving and then feeling really bad and resentful around it. I don't know if that lands for you, but I just in witnessing that, I thought that was an important takeaway. And then what she specifically spoke to, this will be the last piece I'll close on, that I just thought was, maybe I should do a whole live stream on this too. She spoke so much about blowback and just how do you handle blowback. And I won't go into the whole piece around how she talks about handling blowbacks. I think that'll be a whole other conversation. But what I think is valuable for us here in terms of this takeaway is essentially what she is saying is, like, it's just impossible to create a big movement, to create the biggest grassroots movement, to create change, to create a big brand. She has a huge brand, right? To get published, to have a big business, to make a lot of money, to create impact, without also getting blowback. And I know I've talked about this in so many different ways, so I think that's why this part spoke to me so much. But I think this is also so relevant for so many of my clients. What she was saying, and I think this is just so true, what so many of us, particularly as women, do is we will show up for the thing we say we want, whether it's our business, whether it's our activism, whether it's our family, whether it's whatever the thing is that we want, right? Up until the point of where we get blowback. And as soon as we get blowback, we decide it's too much. We decide, see, no, I'm done, right? Like, we let the blowback dictate for us what we can and can't have. And we, like, it just basically crumbles us. And what I have just seen to be true, and what she was speaking to in different ways, and I think what I've talked about quite a bit in my content and my work, is your capacity to handle blowback, your capacity to not take that on and to not crumble and fall, your capacity, I mean, I think she wasn't necessarily saying this, but I was saying this to a client recently, your capacity as well to handle rejection and to handle a failure, and your almost like your comeback speed in terms of, it's like your recovery in sport, right? Your time of like when you get winded and knocked down and how quickly do you get back up, like that's recovery. I just did a hard workout yesterday, right? I have a really great recovery. I can do a set and go for a sprint and I can get right back into another one, but I've had to build that up over time. So your recovery time from when you get a blowback from, you know, a nasty comment or someone being a challenging client or a refund request, your recovery from when you get a rejection to when you get back up and back out there, your recovery time from when you have a so-called failure to when you get back up and put yourself up there, that is where most of us, and I think women more so than men, but not to gender stereotype, but I do think because of good girl conditioning, because of so much conditioning, because so many women are really locked in guilt and shame, as Shannon Watts was saying, that's where so many of us hit our limit and our capacity for success. And your success, your ability to scale, is really found in how you're able to stretch your capacity for that blowback. And what I'm adding to Shannon Watt's conversation is not just your capacity to handle the blowback, but your capacity to handle rejection and failure. And what I'm adding to this conversation is, and your ability, your recovery time from like that blowback, that rejection, that failure to when you get back up and back in the game. So we could do a whole live stream around that as well, but that was just a part of the conversation that really landed for me and really spoke to me. And we could talk about all the nuance, like, you know, why is that the case? I mean, I know I've spoken so much around like, you know, different trauma reasons that like have made blowback for me feel particularly scary or challenging. And I will also say, like, my business has only continued to grow and scale the more I build tolerance and capacity around not inviting it in, but just knowing that if that were to happen, if I were to get blowback, if I were to get rejection, if I were to have failure, that I can handle it. And also knowing it is just impossible to play a big game in business without that, right? I mean, it is there, you're just not going to create policy change. You're just not going to create thought leadership. You're just not going to scale your business without ever getting blowback, without ever getting rejection, without ever getting failure. And so if the whole way we're setting up the game is, I'm going to do everything possible to avoid this, right? What we are actually saying is, I will do everything possible to avoid success and to avoid scaling, because these two are not mutually exclusive. Like, they live in the same world. The reality is that is the only way. Not to say this happen all the time. It's like the more you can run at that and know that you can tolerate that and handle that, again, the more you just stretch your capacity to scale. The more you look at how do you avoid that, the more you are literally solving the wrong problem. And what you are doing is you are trying to build something to avoid what you don't want, instead of, I feel like I talk about this all the time, but so don't mind me for repeating myself. But when we are trying to avoid blowback, rejection, failure, we are setting up an infrastructure for how do I avoid a result, as opposed to when we say I can tolerate that, I can handle that, I'm building my recovery time, we are building towards a result we want, right? So one moves us towards the result of scaling, of growing your business, right, of having more impact. One looks like I am trying to avoid that result, right? And we really want to look at how do we move towards, not move away from. But I think it was just also helpful to have normalized that, you know, this is something I think is so, I think my like final nugget here that I will share, I talk about this a lot, and just one of my thoughts is, I think we forget how what is personal is universal. And so with what Shannon Watts was speaking, she's not in the same industry as me, but what she was sharing that was personal to her felt so universal to every single woman in that room. Every single breakout group, every single conversation I had when I was at dinner, when I was staying up late talking to women afterwards, you know, all the things we were sharing that feel so personal to us were so universal to everybody. And I say that because I think whether you're building a brand new business or you're growing or you're scaling your business, I think sometimes when we're going through things, it can feel, especially when it's challenging, but I think success as well. I think we forget that success can be wildly uncomfortable, as much as it, like, we think it's yummy and we want it, right? There's a lot that comes with it. Whatever that is, I think we are so quick to think, I am on an island, I am isolated, I am the only one who's experiencing this. No one feels this way. And what I would just offer as a reminder and as a reflection that was just helpful for me to be reminded of too is, No, what you're feeling is so universal. I promise what you're going through. I promise what you're feeling. I promise what you're struggling with. I promise what you're celebrating, like all of it. If it is personal to you, it is so universal to so many people. And I think the more we can see that, the more we can normalize it, the less guilt and shame we have, the more we can also talk about it. That is actually the last piece I will say. On the money conversation, one of the things I said that has been most valuable for me is just talking about money more and normalizing that, and getting in rooms with people who want to talk about money. Like that's where so much of my money, wealth building knowledge has come from. But similar to what we're talking about here, the more we can talk about whatever your industry is, right? The more I can talk about business and normalize it. The ins and outs, the goods, the bad, right? The struggles and the wins. Let's say you're in health and fitness, right? The more you can talk about that and have those conversations and normalize those things. Let's say you're a relationship coach. The more you can talk about and normalize what happens behind closed doors in relationships for you, for other people. And remember that what is personal to you is universal to others. The more we lift one another up, the more we support people. But also, like, I know that's what's working in marketing right now, right? Personalized content is working. But that's one of the reasons it's working. It's not just because of AI. It's not just because of relationship building. It's also because what is personal is universal. And when we do that, right, we can really help people to see themselves through us, to normalize things, but also to help people understand how they can apply our learnings, our lessons. All right. I love you all. I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you like these sorts of things. I can share more. I know this is like more just like a laundry list of takeaways, but these are my takeaways. And yeah, hopefully also just helpful to see like this is how I'm observing certain things. I think sometimes that's just interesting. If you have questions on any of this, drop this in the comments for me. If you're listening on the replay inside the vault, feel free to email me. If there's anything I touched on here and you're like, ooh, I would love to hear more about that, Kim, let me know. I do these live streams for you, so I'm always happy to see if that's a topic that feels relevant to go and do a deeper dive on. And then a reminder, there is a live stream next week, but not inside the Facebook group. I'm hosting that free masterclass, Social Currency. I'm going to walk you through the approach that I implemented for years that helps you to buy attention, loyalty, and retention and trust with your audience. And again, it's what's helped me to grow, scale my business, be fully booked for over 7 years, help my clients fill their masterminds. It's helped me to make 30 to 40K cash months, tell my clients to make far more money than me, 50K months, 70K months, 100K months, everywhere in between. It is the approach that is really what you need to make any strategy work. So if you feel like, oh, I don't know, my strategy is not working, I would definitely come for this. If you're feeling like I'm so annoyed at Instagram, reach me down. If you're so annoyed at like feeling like you're trying to perform for social media, this is the class for you. But it is hosted on Zoom, so you got to sign up for it. And if you join me live, again, I will be giving you the same collab outreach template and the same personal like DM script that I used to make an additional $41,150 with 36 DMs last year. All right. I love y'all. I'll see you next week, hopefully for the masterclass. Bye.